Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a belief so common, so ingrained in our culture, it's almost, a dietary commandment. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And with that comes this deep-seated anxiety, right? That skipping it will somehow sabotage your metabolism, make weight loss an uphill battle, or even worse, cause you to gain weight. It's a narrative that, well, it permeates everything from popular diet advice to casual conversations at the gym, leaving many of us feeling guilty and confused, especially if maybe you're just not hungry first thing in the morning. But is that truly the scientific reality? Does delaying your first meal actually grind your metabolism to a halt? That's our mission today. We're going to scientifically unpack this widespread myth, moving far beyond conventional wisdom and emotional attachments to what high-quality research actually shows. We've meticulously combed through your sources, landmark randomized controlled trials, comprehensive meta-analyses, expert consensus from leading institutions, and we're going to unravel the findings, extracting the most crucial insights, complete with surprising facts and direct evidence, to give you a truly well-informed, no-fear perspective. We'll dive deep into what metabolism really is, the surprising truth about breakfast's impact on it, what the latest studies on intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating reveal. Also, specific populations who genuinely benefit from breakfast, how to systematically debunk those persistent myths, and ultimately how you can make truly informed, personalized choices for your unique body. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's truly fascinating here is how profoundly certain nutritional beliefs take root. They often become part of our collective consciousness without sufficient scientific scrutiny. In a world awash with health advice, some solid, some, well, not so much, it's more crucial than ever to apply a rigorous lens of critical thinking, especially to something as fundamental as our daily eating patterns. Our body's metabolic responses are far more nuanced than a simple on or off switch activated by the first meal you consume. Our goal in this deep dive is to empower you with accurate, actionable knowledge, grounded in the highest quality research, those randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses that are truly the gold standard in scientific evidence. We want to help you confidently navigate conflicting information and ultimately eat or fast smarter, allowing you to shed any unnecessary fear about your metabolism.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's jump right into that core question then. What is metabolism beyond that vague, often intimidating idea of burning calories? And does breakfast genuinely kickstart it in the way we've been told for so long?
That's the perfect foundation for our discussion because the term metabolism is frequently oversimplified, which leads to misconceptions. At its core, metabolism is the sum of all chemical processes occurring constantly within your body. These processes convert the food you eat into the energy your body needs. This energy is absolutely vital. It powers every single function that keeps you alive and thriving. From the rhythmic beating of your heart and the circulation of your blood to intricate processes like cell repair, muscle contraction, even your thought processes. It's an incredibly complex, dynamic, and constantly running system. Now, when we talk about burning calories, a significant portion of that happens even when you are completely at rest, doing absolutely nothing. This is known as your resting metabolic rate, or RMR.
RMR.
Think of your RMR as your body's idle speed, the energy it burns just to keep the lights on, so to speak. Even when you're doing absolutely nothing, it's the energy your organs need to function, for your lungs to breathe, for your cells to regenerate. This RMR accounts for a substantial, often surprising, majority of your total daily energy expenditure, or TDEE.
Okay, TDEE is the total burn for the day.
Exactly. Your TDE is the total number of calories you burn in a 24-hour period. It includes your RMR, plus the energy you expend through all physical activity. And something called the thermic effect of food, which we'll unpack shortly. The common belief, of course, is that breakfast directly increases your RMR. Essentially, flipping a switch to make your body burn more calories right from the start of the day.
Right, the kickstart.
But that's where the science takes a surprising turn. The pervasive kickstart myth has been directly and rigorously challenged by high-quality research, perhaps most definitively by the Bath Breakfast Project. This was a landmark randomized controlled trial conducted by a team of researchers at the University of Bath in the UK. This study directly compared individuals who ate breakfast to those who extended their overnight fast. What they found directly contradicts the widespread belief. Resting metabolic rate remained remarkably stable. When comparing breakfast consumption to extended fasting, RMR changed only by approximately 11 kiloliters.
11 calories, that's
Yeah,
tiny.
It's incredibly small. Now, to truly put that 11 calories in perspective, that's an amount of energy so minuscule it's almost negligible. It's less energy than a single breath you take or the calories in like a single bite of an apple. It's a metabolic whisper, not the roar of an engine being kickstarted. The profound insight here is that your body's base calorie burn, your fundamental RMR, is incredibly stable. It operates largely independently of your breakfast timing. It doesn't need a specific meal to wake up or speed up.
That's a powerful debunking of a very common idea. And you mentioned the Bath Breakfast Project as a landmark study. Was this an isolated finding, or is this consistent across other research?
Excellent question, and it's crucial to emphasize consistency here. This was definitely not an isolated finding, no. Multiple other high-quality studies and systematic reviews have consistently shown that breakfast skipping does not significantly affect RMR. For instance, one systematic review specifically analyzing breakfast's impact on metabolism concluded there's no difference in calories burned over 24 hours between people who eat or skip breakfast.
No difference over the whole day.
Wow, this is a critical takeaway. It means your body isn't slowing down its internal furnace just because you delay your first meal. Your metabolic engine is robust and designed for adaptability. And let's elaborate on that thermic effect of food, or TFAF I mentioned earlier.
Right, the energy used for digestion.
Exactly. This is simply the energy your body expends in the process of digesting, absorbing, and storing the nutrients from the food you eat. Every time you consume calories, your body uses energy to process them. This effect occurs regardless of when you eat. It's about the total amount of food you consume across the entire day, not the precise timing of your first meal. Your body is an incredibly sophisticated and highly adaptive biological system. It doesn't shut down or slow down simply because you delay eating for a few hours. It's designed to function efficiently across a range of energy availability, drawing on stored reserves when immediate fuel isn't present.
So it's clear our RMR isn't significantly affected, but you hinted at other metabolic adjustments when breakfast is skipped. What does happen inside the body metabolically if that first meal is delayed? It sounds like it's not a slowdown, but rather a different kind of response.
Precisely. While your RMR remains stable, skipping breakfast does lead to some fascinating and often subtle metabolic adjustments. You see, when breakfast is skipped, research shows you'll experience more variable blood glucose concentrations during the afternoon and evening hours.
So blood sugar swings.
Potentially, yes. This isn't a slowdown of metabolism, but rather an alteration in how your body handles blood sugar throughout the rest of the day. For you, the listener, this could manifest as your energy levels maybe roller coastering a bit more, perhaps sudden dips in focus or intense cravings in the mid-afternoon. Your body is certainly adapting, but for some individuals, this might mean needing to manage those energy fluctuations more consciously. It's a crucial point for understanding blood sugar regulation, especially if you have existing metabolic sensitivities or are predisposed to them. Additionally, breakfast omission can influence hormone regulation. Specifically, studies have noted an elevation in stress hormone levels, particularly cortisol.
Cortisol, the stress hormone.
That's the one. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone, essential for many functions, but chronically elevated levels can have downstream effects on various systems. There's also the potential for breakfast omission to subtly disrupt your natural circadian rhythms, your body's internal clocks that orchestrate various physiological processes, including sleep-wake cycles and hormone release. Without immediate food intake, your body also shifts its primary energy source. It naturally begins to utilize stored energy, first glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates,
Right.
and then it gracefully transitions to using stored fat. This is a perfectly normal adaptive process, far from a sign of a slowed or damaged metabolism. Now, perhaps one of the most significant and often overlooked findings from controlled trials, including the same Bath Breakfast Project we discussed, is that breakfast consumption affects physical activity thermogenesis much more than it impacts resting metabolism.
Physical activity thermogenesis, so burning calories through movement.
Exactly. That study specifically demonstrated that daily breakfast consumption resulted in significantly higher physical activity thermogenesis to the tune of 442 kilio, called higher, compared to fasting, particularly during morning hours.
That's a profound difference. 442 extra calories burned just from physical activity.
Yeah.
What does that really mean for someone's day? Is it about planned exercise or something else?
That's the exact question we need to ask. It's not necessarily about hitting the gym harder. This 442 calories isn't about your metabolism speeding up. It's about the energy you have for spontaneous, non-exercise movement, what scientists call non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT.
Neat. Okay, so like fidgeting and taking the stairs?
Precisely. Think about it. Feeling a little more energetic and motivated to take the stairs instead of the elevator, pacing while on the phone, fidgeting more, or just generally feeling more inclined to move throughout your morning. So for some, skipping breakfast might subtly reduce their spontaneous daily activity, which could indeed impact their total calorie burn more than any direct effect on their RMR. However, it's critical to understand the nuance here. While breakfast consumption does increase total daily energy intake,
Right, you're eating more calories overall.
yes, and it does increase energy expenditure through that enhanced physical activity, the increased caloric intake often exceeds the additional energy expenditure.
Oh, okay. So you burn more, but you eat even more.
Potentially, yes. So if your primary goal is weight loss, simply eating breakfast might, for many individuals, lead to a higher overall calorie consumption that could counteract those additional calories burned from NEAT. There's also a fascinating detail about exercise timing. Skipping breakfast before exercise can create a more negative acute energy balance, around negative 400 kilocal, compared to eating breakfast beforehand.
So working out on an empty stomach burns more net calories in that moment.
In that acute window, yes, it creates a larger immediate deficit. This suggests that for those who exercise regularly, the timing of food intake relative to your physical activity might be more important for acute energy levels and performance than simply whether or not you eat breakfast at all.
So it's not about slowing RMR at all, but rather about different metabolic responses and how your body adapts to the timing of energy intake. That's a crucial distinction. And this is where it gets truly fascinating for many people, because if delaying your first meal doesn't slow anything down, then what about the more structured approaches we hear so much about, like intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, which inherently involve longer periods without food? What does the latest research say there?
Precisely. That leads us directly into the broader context of structured fasting, which has certainly captured a lot of attention. Intermittent fasting, or IF, refers to various eating patterns that cycle between periods of eating and voluntary fasting. Time-restricted eating, or TRE, is a popular form of IF where you consume all your meals within a specific window each day, often involving a conscious decision to skip breakfast and extend the overnight fast.
Right, like the 168 method.
Exactly. These approaches have gained immense popularity precisely because they challenge traditional meal timing conventions, and the scientific community has been diligently researching their effects. Recent comprehensive reviews of IF research are indeed revealing some promising metabolic benefits. For instance, a 2024 Umbrella Review and Network Meta-Analysis Now, that's a mouthful, but it's essentially the highest level of scientific evidence.
Like a study of studies.
Pretty much. Think of it as a super study that meticulously gathers and reanalyzes data from hundreds of individual, high-quality studies on a given topic. It's like having an entire library of research condensed into the most reliable conclusions possible. This particular umbrella review found that all forms of intermittent fasting demonstrate potential to improve metabolic health. And interestingly, among the various forms, alternate day fasting produced the best outcomes across the investigated parameters, though all forms showed benefit.
Alternate day fasting. So eating normally one day, then fasting, or eating very little the next.
Correct. That approach seemed to yield the most significant positive changes in the markers they looked at. When we look at specific metabolic advantages observed with intermittent fasting, studies show some compelling results. For instance, IF has been observed to significantly reduce fasting insulin levels by 20–31%.
Okay, why is lower fasting insulin a good thing for you?
Lower fasting insulin is generally considered a beneficial indicator of improved insulin sensitivity. It means your cells are more responsive to insulin. This is crucial for maintaining stable blood sugar and plays a key role in preventing or managing conditions like type 2 diabetes. Additionally, IF has been linked to an increase in fat-burning hormones, specifically human growth hormone, HGH.
HGH. I thought that was just about growth.
It plays a vital role not just in growth, but also in fat metabolism and the preservation of lean muscle mass, especially during periods of lower calorie intake. These eating patterns can also lead to overall improved glucose control and insulin sensitivity, which are key markers of robust metabolic health and a body that's efficiently managing its energy.
That sounds incredibly promising for many people. But you always caution us about the nuances. What are some of the limitations or specific considerations we should keep in mind with intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating? Because it's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution, right?
You're absolutely right to press on that point. While promising, the evidence for time-restricted eating in certain specific populations remains limited or inconclusive. For example, a systematic review focusing on shift workers, a population with inherently disrupted circadian rhythms.
Yeah, their schedules are all over the place.
Exactly. That review found that while time-restricted eating showed positive effects on glucose metabolism outcomes, such as fasting blood glucose and insulin sensitivity, these effects were non-significant.
Meaning, not strong enough evidence.
Essentially, yes. The data wasn't strong enough to draw a definitive, statistically robust conclusion for that specific group. The researchers also highlighted that current evidence for these specific applications can be inconclusive due to factors like small sample sizes and other study limitations. So while there's exciting potential, it's crucial to understand that potential benefits must always be weighed against potential risks and the strength of the evidence available for your specific situation. It underscores that what works for one group or in a controlled lab setting may not translate perfectly to every real-world scenario.
That's a critical point. Potential benefits versus potential risks, and the idea that a blanket recommendation for or against breakfast doesn't work for everyone. So, given all these nuances, let's pivot and talk about who actually benefits from breakfast. For whom is skipping it perfectly fine, and for whom is it even beneficial, as we saw with some of the IF research. But for whom does breakfast play a particularly important physiological role, and why? This is where your personal experience really comes into play.
That's precisely where personalization truly comes into play, and it's a crucial aspect of informed nutrition. For many healthy adults, the timing of their first meal is genuinely flexible, and their body can adapt well to either approach. But for specific groups, the scientific evidence strongly points to breakfast being a very beneficial, sometimes crucial, meal. First, let's talk about athletes.
Okay.
For them, the evidence strongly suggests breakfast plays a critical role in optimizing performance and facilitating recovery. Research consistently demonstrates that breakfast omission impairs endurance exercise performance later in the day. We're talking about tangible, measurable impacts.
Like what kind of impacts?
Studies have shown 4% reductions in cycling performance and a noticeable decreased basketball shooting accuracy.
Wow. 4% is actually quite a bit in competitive sports.
It really is. And here's the key. This impact occurs even if athletes consume food later in the day. It indicates that for peak athletic output and optimal fueling, meal timing is not just about total daily calories, but about when that fuel is delivered and made available to working muscles. This is especially true for young athletes. They face particular risks if they consistently skip breakfast.
Why is it even more critical for them?
Their bodies are still growing and developing, plus they often have very high energy demands from training. Regular breakfast consumption has been shown to improve their endurance, speed, focus, and even reduces the frequency of illness. Conversely, skipping breakfast in young athletes often leads to muscle loss during training, which is obviously detrimental for their developing bodies and long-term athletic potential. Because of their high energy needs for growth, development, and intense training schedules, meeting caloric requirements within a restricted eating window can be incredibly difficult. For this reason, sports nutrition experts strongly recommend against intermittent fasting for young athletes. Their growing bodies and demanding training schedules require consistent, adequate fuel.
Makes sense. So athletes, especially young ones, really seem to need that morning fuel. Who else?
Next, we need to talk about women and their hormonal considerations. This is an area where gender differences in response to meal timing become particularly apparent. Research indicates that women may be more susceptible to negative effects from breakfast skipping compared to men.
More susceptible? In what ways?
Studies have consistently shown that women who skip breakfast tend to experience higher stress hormone levels, specifically cortisol, along with elevated blood pressure and critically disrupted reproductive hormones. This isn't just about feeling a bit off, it can have tangible health consequences. For example, a 2020 study on female college students found that regular breakfast skippers had higher rates of severe menstrual cramps and irregular periods.
Oh, that's a direct link. So it suggests an impact on ovarian and uterine function.
That's what the research suggests, yes. It's a powerful connection.
Can you elaborate on why that might be the case? How does breakfast help regulate those hormone systems?
Absolutely. Breakfast consumption appears to play a foundational role in helping to regulate crucial hormonal responses, particularly cortisol and insulin. These two hormones are intricately linked and form the bedrock of overall hormonal health, including sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone and thyroid hormones. When breakfast is skipped, the body can perceive this as a prolonged fasting state or even a mild stressor, leading to a more pronounced release of cortisol. Over time, chronic cortisol elevation can interfere with the delicate balance of other hormones, including those involved in the menstrual cycle. Similarly, skipping breakfast can lead to greater swings in blood sugar and insulin responses later in the day, and insulin sensitivity is also profoundly connected to reproductive hormone balance.
So it's a complex interplay of stress hormones and blood sugar regulation affecting reproductive health.
Exactly. The evidence suggests that for many women, a consistent, nourishing breakfast supports this delicate hormonal equilibrium. It's also worth noting that women practicing intermittent fasting may not experience the same metabolic benefits as men, particularly regarding growth hormone responses, which further highlights a key physiological difference between sexes that needs to be considered when giving general recommendations.
Really important distinctions there. Okay, athletes, women. Who else particularly benefits?
Then there are individuals with metabolic conditions, such as type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. For these populations, breakfast consumption appears distinctly beneficial and, in some cases, crucial for managing their condition. Research consistently shows that consuming breakfast improves glucose and insulin responses throughout the day compared to skipping it.
Better blood sugar control, essentially.
Precisely. This is vital for maintaining stable blood sugar levels, preventing harmful post-meal spikes, and improving insulin sensitivity, all critical for individuals managing or at risk of these conditions. Furthermore, studies indicate that frequent breakfast skipping is associated with a 61% higher odds of metabolic syndrome and an increased risk of elevated blood pressure.
61% higher odds. That's significant.
It is. So for those already dealing with or at risk of these conditions, breakfast can clearly be a protective and therapeutic factor. And for all these groups, and frankly for everyone, it's not just about eating breakfast, but about the composition of that breakfast.
Oh, right. What you eat matters, not just that you eat.
Exactly. The quality truly matters, perhaps even more than its timing, especially for those at risk. Evidence suggests that breakfasts high in whole grains and fiber, while limiting rapidly available carbohydrates, things like highly processed sugary cereals, pastries, or white toast with jam, provide the most metabolic benefits, particularly for individuals at risk of type 2 diabetes.
So a bowl of sugary puffs is not the same as oatmeal with berries and nuts.
Not even close, metabolically speaking. The nutrient profile is paramount for getting those benefits we're talking about.
That's incredibly insightful. So it's not just a binary eat breakfast or don't eat breakfast. It's about who are you as an individual, what are your specific needs and goals, and what kind of breakfast are we even talking about? Now, with all that scientific context now firmly established, it's time to directly confront and systematically dismantle some of the most common, stubborn fears and misconceptions about breakfast and metabolism that still circulate. We've already laid the groundwork, but let's address these beliefs head on.
Absolutely. Let's peel back these final layers of misconception one by one with clear scientific counter-evidence. Myth 1. Breakfast jumpstarts metabolism. The lingering belief is that breakfast acts like a magical button, instantly revving up your metabolic engine. But the reality, as we've discussed in detail, is that this is simply not true. Multiple high-quality studies, including the Bath Breakfast Project, firmly confirm that breakfast does not significantly increase your resting metabolic rate or kickstart metabolism in any meaningful way.
That 11-calorie difference we talked about.
Exactly, it's negligible. The thermal effect of food, the energy your body uses to digest and process what you eat, occurs whenever you consume calories, regardless of the time of day. Your body's base metabolic rate, its idle speed, is always running. What truly matters for your overall metabolism and energy expenditure is the total amount of food consumed throughout the day, providing the fuel for your body's constant work, not specifically the timing of your first meal. Myth 2. Skipping breakfast causes weight gain.
This is a big one. The fear that skipping it makes you fatter.
It is a huge fear for many people, the idea that missing a meal will somehow backfire and lead to unwanted pounds. But the reality is that high-quality randomized controlled trials show mixed and often contradictory results to this intuitive idea. In fact, a 2019 meta-analysis, which, again, pools data from multiple rigorous studies, found that breakfast skippers actually had a slightly lower body weight, by a 0.44 kilogram difference, compared to breakfast eaters.
Lower weight, so the opposite of the myth.
Slightly lower, on average in those studies, yes. Another systematic review confirmed that, for some individuals, breakfast skipping may even have a modest impact on weight loss in the short term. This directly challenges the intuitive belief that missing a meal will make you heavier. Weight management is far more complex than just meal timing. It's about overall calorie balance and diet quality. Myth 3. Breakfast prevents overeating later.
Right, the idea that if you skip, you'll just binge later to make up for it.
Exactly. This myth suggests that if you skip breakfast, you'll be so ravenous by lunchtime or dinner that you'll inevitably consume far more calories, negating any perceived deficit. The reality from controlled research consistently shows that people who do eat breakfast generally consume 260 to 540 more calories per day total compared to those who skip it.
Wow, quite a bit more overall.
Yes, and crucially, breakfast skippers do not fully compensate for the missed morning calories by overeating later in the day. So the idea that skipping breakfast inevitably leads to uncontrolled binging or compensatory overeating later is simply not supported by controlled trials. While individual hunger cues certainly vary, the total caloric intake over 24 hours often ends up being lower for those who skip breakfast rather than higher due to some uncontrollable surge in appetite. Myth 4. Everyone needs breakfast for health.
The universal commandment.
Exactly. This is perhaps the most important myth to debunk, as it often causes unnecessary guilt and stress. The reality is that the benefits of breakfast vary significantly by individual factors, including lifestyle, current health status, and even long-standing habitual eating patterns. The effects of breakfast consumption can differ depending on whether people are lean or obese, and individual metabolic responses vary considerably. This reiterates that there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all answer in nutrition. What works optimally for one person, be it a dedicated athlete, a woman with specific hormonal considerations, or someone managing diabetes, may not be the optimal approach for another healthy individual with different goals and daily routines. The concept of universal need is largely a relic of outdated generalized dietary advice.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion here, and each layer reveals a more complex, individualized truth about our bodies. To solidify our understanding even further, let's look at what major medical institutions and long-term studies contribute to this conversation. And it's especially important, like you said earlier, to acknowledge the potential for bias in some of the historical research we've all heard about.
That's an excellent point because critically evaluating the source and context of information is absolutely key, especially in nutrition. When we look at the Harvard Medical School position, their researchers have explicitly acknowledged a critical point for listeners. Many studies historically linking breakfast to various health benefits were funded by cereal companies.
Ah, the funding bias. That's always something to watch for.
Absolutely. This is a crucial consideration, as it certainly creates a potential for bias in the interpretation and dissemination of findings. Harvard's current stance is quite nuanced. Eating breakfast won't necessarily help with weight loss in a direct sense, but skipping it might not harm everyone either. They also emphasize that extending overnight fasting for at least 16 hours.
Like in time-restricted eating.
Exactly. That allows blood sugar and insulin levels to decrease, which can then enable your body to effectively use its fat stores for energy. This aligns beautifully with what we discussed about the potential benefits of intermittent fasting. Moving to the Mayo Clinic research, their studies have observed some interesting associations with regular breakfast consumption. They found that people who ate breakfast daily gained less weight over time, about 3 pounds over a period, compared to 8 pounds for non-breakfast eaters, and had smaller belly circumference with less visceral fat, which is that metabolically active fat around your organs.
Okay, so some benefits seen there.
Yes, but the Mayo Clinic researchers emphasize a very important nuance. This isn't necessarily about eating more or fewer calories in total, but potentially about eating the same calories earlier in the day.
Chrononutrition again. Timing matters relative to our body clock.
Exactly. It really points towards the emerging and fascinating field of chrononutrition, suggesting a potential benefit to synchronizing meals with our circadian rhythm. Now, let's consider research that has touched on NIH and cardiovascular health. While the National Institutes of Health hasn't issued definitive broad statements specifically on breakfast and metabolism, research funded by the NIH does suggest mixed outcomes. Some meta-analyses, which aggregate data from many studies, have suggested potential cardiovascular risks from breakfast skipping, showing a 21% higher risk of cardiovascular events and a 32% higher risk of all-cause mortality among regular breakfast skippers.
Whoa, those numbers sound pretty scary. Higher risk of heart problems and dying.
They do sound alarming, right? It certainly catches headlines. But here's the absolutely critical caveat, which we cannot emphasize enough. These are observational studies.
Okay, explain that again. Observational versus what?
Observational studies can show an association, meaning two things tend to happen together, but they cannot establish causation. This is incredibly important for you to understand. They can't prove that skipping breakfast caused the heart problems.
Can you give us an example of how that correlation versus causation plays out in this context? Because it sounds like a big distinction.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. People who regularly skip breakfast might also have other less healthy lifestyle habits. Are these breakfast skippers also the ones who consistently smoke, get inadequate sleep, have highly irregular daily routines, grab fast food for their other meals, or face high-stress jobs that make structured eating difficult?
Ah, okay. So it might not be the breakfast skipping itself, but the whole lifestyle package that goes with it.
Precisely. It's not just the missing breakfast, it's the entire package of lifestyle habits that could be at play, influencing those observed health risks. The act of skipping breakfast itself might simply be a marker for a less healthy overall lifestyle, rather than the direct cause of the health issues. It's vital not to misinterpret correlation for causation and always to look at the broader context of a person's habits. On the topic of long-term effects, let's directly address another persistent worry: the metabolic damage myth.
Right, the idea that you permanently break your metabolism.
Yes, the idea that breakfast skipping causes some permanent, irreparable harm to your metabolism. Current research provides no evidence that breakfast skipping causes long-term metabolic damage or permanently slows metabolism. Studies spanning several weeks to months consistently show that resting metabolic rate remains stable regardless of breakfast habits. The concept of your metabolism being broken or damaged by simply skipping a meal or two is completely unfounded based on available scientific evidence.
That's reassuring. Your body is more resilient than that.
Much more. Your body is remarkably robust and adaptive, far more resilient than popular myths suggest. In terms of long-term weight and body composition effects, as we touched on earlier, some studies suggest that breakfast skipping may actually support modest weight loss in some individuals. A comprehensive analysis found that breakfast skipping significantly reduced body weight by 0.54 kilograms compared to breakfast consumption over an average study duration of about 8.6 weeks.
So a little over a pound difference, favoring the skippers in that analysis.
Exactly. So if anything, for many, it might slightly aid weight management rather than hinder it by subtly reducing overall calorie intake throughout the day. However, it's also associated with a potential trade-off. This same analysis found that breakfast skipping was also associated with increased LDL cholesterol levels.
LDL, the bad cholesterol.
That's the one it's often referred to as, yes. This is an important cardiovascular consideration that needs to be weighed against any potential weight loss benefits. And again, this could be influenced by the overall quality of one's diet, not just the timing of the first meal. Someone skipping breakfast but eating poorly later might see worse LDL than someone skipping breakfast but eating well later.
Right. Quality always comes back into it.
Absolutely. Ultimately, all this research, from landmark trials to major institutional perspectives, reinforces a core truth. Metabolic responses to breakfast vary significantly among individuals. Factors such as your habitual breakfast consumption patterns, your overall diet quality, your physical activity levels, and your unique individual metabolism all profoundly influence how breakfast affects your health outcomes. Some people may truly thrive with intermittent fasting approaches, while others genuinely benefit from consistent breakfast consumption. There's no single script, no universal dietary commandment that applies to everyone.
Okay, so after this deep dive into the science, the myths, the individual nuances, and even the potential biases in research, what does all of this mean for you, the listener? How do we take all this rich, detailed information and turn it into clear, actionable takeaways for your daily life? How can you apply this knowledge right now?
The first and most crucial takeaway is to release the fear about your metabolism. The scientific evidence clearly shows that the claim about breakfast skipping slowing metabolism is overwhelmingly a myth. Your resting metabolic rate remains stable, whether you eat breakfast or not. The primary metabolic effects involve changes in physical activity levels and glucose regulation, not a metabolic slowdown. For most healthy adults, breakfast skipping does not cause metabolic harm and may even subtly support modest weight loss. So you can finally let go of that nagging worry.
Okay, ditch the fear. That's huge. What's next?
Second, and perhaps most important, is that individual variation is paramount. The decision to eat or skip breakfast should be highly individualized. It depends entirely on your unique circumstances. Consider your lifestyle factors, your work schedule, your daily routine, your energy demands. It depends on your current health status. Are you managing diabetes, dealing with specific hormonal issues, or are you an athlete training intensely? And crucially, it depends on your personal goals, whether that's optimizing athletic performance, managing your weight, or balancing your hormones. But beyond all the data points, it also depends immensely on how you feel.
Right, listening to your own body.
Exactly. Do you feel energized and focused when you eat breakfast? Or do you feel sluggish and find yourself better off waiting until later in the day to eat? Your body's signals are incredibly important here. They are your most direct and personalized feedback loop.
So what are the concrete actions someone can take away from this deep dive?
Okay, so to provide some actionable takeaways for you. First, don't fear your metabolism. Let go of the worry that skipping breakfast will break or slow down your metabolism. Your body is incredibly robust, adaptable, and designed to handle periods of not eating. Second, prioritize overall diet quality. This cannot be stressed enough. The total daily nutrition, what you eat across all your meals and snacks, and the quality of your food choices are far more critical than rigid adherence to traditional meal timing. Focus on whole, unprocessed foods, ample protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich carbohydrates.
Quality over timing, basically.
In many ways, yes. Third, listen to your body's signals. This is your internal compass. If you wake up genuinely hungry, eat. If you're not hungry until later in the morning or early afternoon, it's perfectly fine to wait. Pay close attention to your energy levels, your focus, your digestion, and how different eating patterns make you feel throughout the day. Fourth, consider your specific needs. Remember the populations we discussed. If you're an athlete in heavy training or a woman experiencing specific hormonal concerns or someone managing diabetes or metabolic syndrome, a quality breakfast might be particularly beneficial for you. Don't dismiss it if your body truly thrives on it. Fifth, focus on nutrient density when you do eat. If you do eat breakfast, especially for those with metabolic concerns, prioritize nutrient-dense options rich in whole grains and fiber and healthy proteins and fats. Limit rapidly available carbohydrates like refined sugars and processed cereals. And finally, sixth, seek professional guidance. For specific health conditions, complex dietary changes, or if you have persistent concerns about your metabolism or health, always consult with a doctor or a registered dietitian. They can provide personalized advice tailored to your unique medical history and goals.
That's a truly liberating synthesis. We've gone from a rigid, fear-based rule to a flexible, empowering, and informed choice. We've thoroughly debunked the core myth that skipping breakfast slows metabolism, and we've replaced that fear with a nuanced understanding of how your incredible body truly works. Knowing all of this empowers you to make choices that genuinely align with your body and your lifestyle, rather than being dictated by outdated or incomplete information. So with this new understanding, what does this all mean for your next meal, or how you think about your body's energy for the rest of the day? We encourage you to reflect on your own habits through this new, informed lens, and to continue questioning pervasive health advice that might not serve you.
This raises an important question. In a world inundated with information and quick-fix advice, how do we discern what truly serves our health best? Beyond the superficial headlines and catchy slogans, the human body possesses an incredible adaptability, and understanding that is key to adopting a flexible, informed approach to nutrition that respects individual variation. Keep that curiosity alive, stay open to new evidence, and continue exploring beyond those initial headlines. There's always more to learn about your remarkable body.